Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. This is exciting time that we have a lot of people joining today, and this is very very exciting as I mentioned, and putting a lot of pressure on us to deliver this webinar on this topic. And I do thank you for coming today. Today we're going to be streaming live and from a bigger audience that I usually conducted from my office, but today I have a lot of people in the room here as well. So and people online remotely. Again, I'm going to start sharing. Dan, can I start sharing? This will take away the survey.
And stop sharing my screen.
Okay, good. And just to your point, we have a lot of people who are not familiar with the feature, so that's also exciting that we're gonna introduce you to that different level of resource management capability within Microsoft Project Cloud and Project Online and Project Server. So I'm sharing my screen, and looks like you should be able to see my screen. Okay. This is going to be a resource management conversation and primarily engagement, and which I will introduce later. But let me just go through the quick agenda quickly about me. Here's my old picture, my name, and basically I have been doing this for the last 15 years, doing the project management, and my background is in mechanical engineering and system programming. And I'm proud to be a managing partner at Trusted IT Group, and looking forward to doing more work with you in the industry. Also, I'm certified Scrum Master and PMP, as well as proud to be Microsoft Most Valuable Professional for 3 years in a row, and that's also exciting news. Used to be 4 years ago, but thank Microsoft for awarding that to me for several years in a row. What we're going to talk quickly, I just want to, before I get you into the tool, before I get you to the actual tool and clicking, I'd like to kind of set some frame or set some stage on which I'll be actually showing a lot of this information. And there's a lot of schools of thought. How do we do the management, in particularly the resource management? And in this case, we're going to be talking quickly about the bottom-up and top-down and bottom-up approaches. From the strategic approach, and just I'm sure a lot of this is kind of straightforward and familiar to you from this concepts of management. But I'm going to be basically using that and applying that to the resource management, because these topics are very much correlated to each other. So top-down approach is fairly simple. Like, we're looking at the strategic direction at the C level and leadership level, where we know that we need to move in this and that direction. And this is how basically, top-down approach is telling us, okay, it came from upstairs, you guys need to do this, you need to hire this or that, and that's basically a top-down approach. Basically, obviously, the bottom-up approach is like, okay, the initiatives, the ideas that came from the ground, and these ideas needs to be traveling all the way up in order to be approved, right? To spend the money, this bottom-up approach is very much taking place in today's world in reality. So you probably wonder, what is it? The third picture is going to be on that slide, and here it is. So the complexity in managing and organizing the resources, particularly, right? And I don't want to talk about the generic management topic. This is just from the resource management perspective. All kinds of George is asking for the control. I'm sorry, I cannot give you the control. in the middle, this is where this process may actually collide or actually yield some good results. And this is where we would like to make and connect the top-down and bottom-up approaches in a way that this is looked at a simple one process where we can actually accept the information and requests and good ideas that are coming from actual teams on the ground, get them funneled through this middle layer, and as well as understand the strategic stewardship of that ship, right? Strategic the alignment of where we actually need to go as a bigger entity, and then make sure we have good analytics and apply modern technology and modern ways of analytics to actually come to good decisions. So some of you are familiar with this middle out algorithms that are breaking through, but this is where we're going to be focusing on understanding how we can align the strategy and the ideas in the ground and push this out to the business and generate more value, basically. Okay. All right. So here's in terms of the project management and resource management, just from the project management, we're looking at the portfolio level 1, project level 2, and task level 3. When it comes to resource management, we would like to make sure that we're balancing our resources from the organizational perspective. We're not putting too much on our teams. We're not having teams that have nothing to do. We just put in the right amount of effort, amount of work on and load our teams from the portfolio perspective. That's what we need to know from the leadership perspective. And then it trickles down to the project level. Within the project, when we're wearing a project manager's hat, we would like to make sure that we have a good understanding of our resources on this particular project, basically on project by project basis. So within the project, we can come up with a good balanced resource management approach. And then when we get to the actual execution of those tasks and activities, this is where we would want to make sure that the execution of those activities is in place. So there's a reason why I highlighted the portfolio in yellow here is because we're going to be focusing on how do we deal with that from the portfolio level, from the organizational leadership level, and apply that. Once that is balanced at the portfolio level, this is the basically the ticket for resources to be balanced at the project and then at the task level. Okay, so from the resource management perspective, so we just talked about the kind of how do we apply these resources on the project and the portfolio. From the more detailed perspective on the resource management, at the level 1, at the high level portfolio management, we're looking at the high level resource estimates. So when we are typically, and this discussion today is going to be focusing on at the higher level, if you will, of this pyramid, top bottom, top down, bottom up. We're going to be more focusing on the top because at the end of the day, the financial and the budgeting is coming from the top, after all, and the approvals are coming from the top. So we need to make sure that the top is aligned with everything that we're doing at the bottom. So at the high level resource estimate, this is the key conversation today. How can we set up our tools and systems and people in order to be able to provide them the ability to create those high-level estimates? And in many cases, some of these capital projects or larger projects, initiatives, or smaller projects, you at some point, at some level of granularity, would be able to tell how many resources at what capacity you would need to assign to those projects. Just simply saying, like, let's say this is a project, maybe a typical project for the organization, and you would probably already know this takes on average X amount of time and X amount of people, so you can at the high level start putting this information in the system, and will be playing a role across the enterprise. It will be playing a role in your overall organizational demand and capacity. I will be showing you the actual tool and the actual clicks and how this is organized in Project Online, but this is kind of setting up the stage before I do that. So level 1, high level resource estimates. Then the second step, we're going to go through the resource balancing. So at the high level, we say how many people we need at what capacity, at which project. The second step, we'd like to balance these resources across multiple projects within our resource pool, right? And then once we balance that, then we can actually get to the stage where we can assign those resources to actual activities. So in this case, we detach our overall complex organizational resource management balancing exercise. We detach this from the actual assignments on actual tasks. Because at the high level, at the leadership level, we may not know, which exact tasks these resources are going to be assigned to. So we need a higher level sort of entity that we can work with as far as resource management and balancing those resources. I know I'm just talking a lot of terms and kind of hypothetical, but trust me, it's going to get very real on the tool when I get to the demo. Okay. All right, and I'm proud to have this new movements on the slide. Anyway, resource engagements. So all the way up until 2016 version of Project Server and Project Online recently, the Project Server and Project Online had this feature called resource plans, and now it's being retired. And a new feature that replaced this feature is called resource engagements. Okay, and resource engagements, I will be giving you a little bit of an overview of the resource engagements as it is on Project Online in a second. But before I do that, I want to emphasize a few things that I think a lot of organizations are struggling when it comes to resource management. And the key success factor is make it simple. So how do we make something simple that is very complex? And I guess this is where we're trying to balance these two self-balancing kind of topics and trying to find the middle ground where we can actually generate the value. Because sometimes if it's really complex, you can't really deal with that, so there's no value in doing that. When it's too simple, it's not giving you the rigor that you need at the enterprise level, so it's not working again. So how do we actually make something that is fairly complex? How do we make it simple? So the way we suggest to make it simple, a few slides later, just a quick overview of the engagement feature. Let me just switch back to the engagements very quickly. So the engagements in Project Online and Project Server, it's a major three steps. Let me actually get you 3 steps right here. So the step number 1, the resource manager decides who needs approval. So resource manager says, I can say that this team needs approval before they get assigned to actual task, or this team doesn't need approval when they get assigned to a task. So you can configure that. And the tool allows you to be very flexible on that. So then the project manager, or someone who is at the right security permissions, would be able to request new engagements, new resources to be working on a new project or on existing projects. So you can open up that flow that says, here's, if you need the resource, you gotta go and put the request in, and there's fairly easy process to do that. The number 3, then when the request gets approved by the resource manager. So basically 1, 2, 3 steps, right? Even the step number 1 doesn't have to be repeated over and over again. This is by resource. The step number 2 and 3, you request the resource and then you approve the resource. I got some question. Feel free to type your questions. Move that. Yes, the deck and the recording, actually I think we're recording this, will be also distributed, so you'll be able to get a copy of it. And I think we have time for the questions, and the chat that Dan put out there. Feel free to use that chat to put any questions, and then we'll be able to address them at the end of the session. So I hope I'll have enough time to do that too. All right, so this is just a quick overview. I will show you how it's done on an actual tool. I think it's even probably easier to show it in a tool than show it in this slide. Anyway, how do we make it simple? So I made it very non-creative list of projects, but forgive me for that. This is just a list of projects, and within the life cycle of the project, you may have your intake process, or you may have the governance that tells this project is approved. Whatever the process you use, at some point, you need to review those resources. You need to say, okay, we are as an organization approving this project and the list of resources to be working on this project. So the way we're suggesting, the simple way we're suggesting we look at this is by having the list of projects in front of ourselves. Then we can say, okay, on this project, and I'd like to have these people working on this project. And then for the next project, I want the other list of people working on that project. Make it very simple to understand. Again, list of projects in front of you and list of resources in front of you. And then we can start saying, okay, this resource may or may not be working for this period of time, or maybe we should assign this person at 50% of his time, this person at 10% of his time, and maybe he needed only at the end of the project. This person needed needed at the beginning of the project. So you then tune this up, and then you go through the governance of approving those resource requests. So basically, this picture that I'm showing right now makes it fairly simple. At least I'd like to think this way. That it makes it fairly straightforward for the leadership team to understand what are my projects that I'm dealing with, what are those resources, and how do I approve them, and how do I look at them and approve them. So this picture doesn't explain how do I look at them. It doesn't explain is there any more analytics to it, but the actual tool will have more information that you can use in order to approve or reject some of these resources. Okay, so the add-on that we put together is just is an add-on from our company that makes this work with an interaction with the resource engagements, makes it a little bit more user-friendly, if you will, like drag and drop capabilities, like you can replace and see the heat map. If you're just over-allocating someone, it will tell you right away before you even run any report. You don't need to run any reports. It tells you right away. It's just like a live heat map. It's a live heat map, right? And one of the things that also here is allowing you to do the auto leveling. Many of you are familiar with the auto leveling in the MS project as a feature. So we basically extended this capability to engagements, so you can actually do the auto leveling at the enterprise level. So not within a particular project, but you can put this out, into the, elevate the level of at which you can do that into the portfolio. So you can run this auto leveling against, let's say, a set of resources, or you can run this against a set of projects, or you can run this against a set of portfolios. So you can say maybe my program, a particular program that is subset out of my entire portfolio, I can run my auto leveling resource balancing exercise just for that particular subset of projects. And trust me, I'm going to be doing a lot of clicks later on, but I just want to make sure that I explain it before I do that. Okay, all right, there I go. Now it's demo time. So now I go to my browser over here, and I'm going to quickly just show you how it sits within the MS project online. And here's what you see is one of our many demo and dev environments that we use to show different things here and there. This is the project online, part of the Office 365, right? There's familiar waffle here with all the menus, and you can see we have a lot of things, a lot of additional links that are added here. So basically, when it comes to the resource engagements, there's a kind of out-of-the-box way of dealing with that by going to my resources. If you go to my resources, I can look at my list of my enterprise resources, and then here at the ribbon, I have this resource requests. So resource requests, again, what I'm showing to you right now, this is all out of the box. Resource requests, you can click on the resource requests, and you'll be able to see all the resource requests that have been put in here by different people, right? It could be put by me, could be put by someone else, by all the project managers that are requesting their resources. You can probably tell that this is fairly cumbersome picture to look at, but the only thing I'm just going to show you at this point from the out-of-the-box perspective is like you can add an engagement. If you click on add an engagement, it will open up this form where you'll be able to tell, I'd like to have Alex to work on on this project, and this is as per purchase order or SOW, right, XYZ, and he's allowed to work only for from the 1st of November till basically 3 months. Let's put it this way, 3 months, and he's going to be working 20% of his time. Okay, let's say 50% of his time. So since I am the manager of Alex, this request will likely be automatically approved and automatically committed. But there's if this resource needs an approval, this will go through the approval process, which is basically right here. If this is what is proposed, if there's a proposed resource, I can just basically click on this and click on accept, and this will accept the engagement. So this is very, very simple, right? In a sense, and Microsoft was trying really hard to make it simple, trust me. Although this is looking a little bit cumbersome, let me show you the add-on that we put together, which kind of makes it a little bit more modern kind of style in managing that, and adds that auto leveling capability. So when you add that resource here, there's no way you can auto level that and change that. So on my other tab, this is basically how it looks like when you just load this. And this list of items here, this is the list of those engagements. Every line item on that table is basically an engagement, right? And I can quickly add this here. So if I'd say I want to click on the plus button and say, okay, this is engagement for Alex, right? And this is coming from TIG level tool, right? And I know the owner of this project. I can actually click and email this person right away and say, hey, owner of this project, how about I'm going to add another request? So just give you a heads up. Go ahead and approve that if that's appropriate. Put this time and say I'm requesting 20 hours of Alex over here, and then this request is edit. So it's edit right now as what if scenario, because guess what? When I added this resource here, I didn't know maybe there's a conflict for these 20 hours in that time frame. Maybe I actually need to change something. So let me just actually change this from 20 hours to let's say 100%. Let me just change this a little bit. So I just added more work, right? And all of a sudden I can see that there's over allocation for that line item that I just added, which means that I have to deal with that. I mean, I can't really submit it. It's likely going to be rejected because this is creating over allocation. So what I can do then I can do several things. Before I show you the ways to balance this, let me just give you a quick show around what does it look like. So first of all, on the left, you see the different filters where you can actually say, I would like to see only one resource here. I can see, maybe my team is of 3 people. I'd like to see and focus only on them. And I'd like to see the engagements that are relevant to my team only, not the entire portfolio. Or I can say, I'll just select back all. I can switch to project and say, what, I'd like to focus on this one project. I'd like to see if I have any over allocated resources for my project. Let's just find a project that is, well, let's just see engagement project. We'll just say a project. Yeah, so if I select that, it will tell me, okay, this is one engagement for this project. There's no over allocation. I can look at it from project by project basis, and obviously I can also search and see a project, and this will just sort things out. Let's say Alex. Yeah. So all the names that have Alex's in there. So anyway, this is filtering. Then further down here, I can collapse all or add a new engagement. This is the order leveling. We're going to get back to this. This is undo, very useful when you need to undo things that you didn't want to do. This is the save and propose those what-if scenarios. Every time you change something here, it switches the status of the engagement into the what-if. So let's say if I'm changing this, some of these engagements, this will create a what-if. This is the window that I'm working with. So I'm looking at July 2017, January 2018. So I should probably look at the engagements that are starting from now and beyond and going forward. But sometimes those engagements that are starting earlier, I would have to kind of close those engagements that are in the past and rebalance things that are in the future. This is basically giving you the window within which the order leveling will be dealing with and not going too much outside of the window. You can also look at this. Now it's showing you the percentage, which is also known as FTE concept. You can also switch this to show the hours, the actual hours versus the FTEs. You can also group this. Now it's not grouped by anything, but it can also group this by project. So if I group this by project and minimize everything, remember that simple concept of looking at the list of projects? So this is the same kind of concept. You're looking at the list of projects. You can drill into every project and say, okay, this project has 3 resources. I can look at these 3 resources. I can tell that these 3 resources, they have different engagements that are assigned. So you may have multiple engagements per resource, per project. So let's say I have the engagement at the beginning of the project, and maybe I have an engagement at the end of the project. And that's why I want to just kind of split my engagement for this project, not throughout the whole project, but I would just focus on the very beginning and the very end. So you can also look at this by resource basis and look at, and balance every single resource individually. Say, Alex here, for example, is booked at 2 engagements, and well, they're over allocated. So I have to probably rebalance this a little bit. And very lovely feature of export all data to Excel. You can also search this, search the entire portfolio of these engagements right here without getting to the certain things quickly. And you can also save a scenario and load a new scenario. So let's say you're trying to add few resources here and there, and you'd like to save this scenario and then maybe load the scenario later because you're not ready to submit that yet. So you may want to save this scenario because guess what? This particular pool of engagements, this is everybody else's using. So if you're not the only one in the organization who playing with this, you may want to, or playing with the same project, each of you can actually save your own scenarios and then come to a meeting and propose different cases and have meaningful information in hand before the leadership team, so you can all make a better decision. Okay. All right, now it's time to show some cool things. So, for example, if I decide I'd like to look at my engagements here, and I'd like to extend some of these engagements. Well, let's just say a scenario. Let's just say scenario. I'd like to balance a particular resource. Right. The way I would do this, I would group it by resource, find that resource over here, or more so, I can simply go to show all the resources and say, where's Alex? Okay, Alex is here. So maybe I'm going to just say Alex, and just select this one particular resource. And this tells me that within this time frame, this person is, well, he's under allocated a little bit, but he's over allocated, in the August to September time frame. So what I can do several things. I can either manually say, you know what, okay, this is very, this is very busy time. So I'm going to just reduce this engagement down to, and I can just start clicking on these boxes. This is how I manage or expand the timeline or shrink the timeline. I'd like to expand, let's say, this one over here, the second engagement. And even if I put the 78%, I still have 8 hours only on this engagement, so it doesn't over-allocate in this point. And I can shrink down the beginning of this. Oh, it's probably going too much in the past, so we should probably leave this one alone. And I can probably want to move the one that's number one, the first engagement. So I move this to the January, and I'm gonna start clicking on these boxes and reduce the timeline of this, and maybe push this all the way to January. So I can basically what I'm trying to say is that when you go to and start clicking on these cells, it automatically expands or shrinks the timeline. So this is one way of kind of balancing it kind of manually, right? But guess what? This will also may have an impact on actual projects. So if you do that, project may delay their timeline. So this may not be a real scenario. But what you can also do, if I go back to this timeline and basically over-allocate this a little bit more, just on purpose, start over-allocating this more. Here we have the over-allocation. See, I have the initial units very low, so that's why I could actually overlap a lot of these activities at the same time. But if I bring some of these up to 100%, this will create more over-allocations. So in this case, I can just say, someone else will either reduce the units, which would reduce the level of engagement of this person in this engagement. Okay. What I can also do, I say, you know what? Out of all this, let me just go back here and do the undo. Just do the undo. And I say, I want to see. Let me just see who else I have in my resource pool. How about I assign this first engagement to someone else? And I say, you know what? I want Charles to do this. I don't want Alex to do this. I just grab Charles from here and drag him over to this engagement, which will ultimately substitute. Well, if I also add Charles here. So now Charles is assigned to this task instead of Alex. And that removes the over-allocation at this point. So I can also, maybe another task is going to be done by Charles too. Let's see if Charles can handle two. So I can assign this to Charles. Now it's over-allocation is reduced. So I can either balance it by shifting it on the timeline. I can balance it by reassigning to someone else, or if I undo this again. Or I can click on this auto leveling feature, which in this case I have two resources selected. I have Charles and I have Alex. Charles has a couple of things here. Alex has a couple of things here. I can click on the level engagements. What this will do, this will take into account the project priorities and will shift this automatically and create this. And it's basically telling me that I have this two engagement that have changed their timelines, and I can now submit this and propose this to my resource manager. So now it's in the proposed state, and I can actually go back and then look at my engagements here. Remember, we were here at this page when we didn't have any proposed engagements. So now if I go here, here's the 2 that I proposed, and I can either use the filter or the view here to always look at what are those proposed engagements that I need to approve, and or can use the filter here, say proposed. It will just, like in Excel, will automatically filter that, and I can say 2 of these engagements. I can look at them and say, yeah, okay, the level of effort involved, okay, approve, and then now it's committed engagement. So from that point going forward, the project manager of this project, which is in this case actually different projects. So these are different projects for the same resource. All of these respective project managers can now actually use this engagement and start assigning those approved engagements for the project, start assigning those resources to the actual activities. So that's how we get from the portfolio level balancing here. And if my favorite part of showing this, if I go undo this, well, I can only undo that is not committed. Since this is already committed, I can just probably refresh the whole page here, and I can say, show me everything. Show me everything. I can look at what is it. So I can still have some of the engagements that still need to be balanced. So if I'm selecting a particular subset of resources or particular set of portfolios, I can apply this to my entire portfolio. So this would rebalance those over-allocated engagements, and now I don't have any over-allocations. So you can use different tools, different analytics, in terms of what is it the best way, either to manually move it a little bit, or maybe you can reassign it to someone else and then move it a little bit, or you can reassign it to someone else, move it, and then apply the order leveling, and kind of have these options in your possession to balance the portfolio. The other thing I wanted to show you is this slide over here, which is basically a Power BI dashboard that is reading live from any Project Online environment. And this particular template is going to be available for everyone who's attending today's webinar. You can reach out to Daniel, or I'm sure Daniel will send you a follow-up, and then just say you want a copy of this Power BI template. You'll be able to just open this template, put your URL in of your environment, and as long as you have access to the environment, it will load your particular environment information into this Power BI, and you'll be able to use it and do whatever you want with it. So, but before you do that, let me just show you a little bit what it does. So right now I have it here published, and this one has quite a bit of filters on the top. So you can use different resource level filtering, like location, like the generic versus not generic, industry or a calendar or a country or whatever the resource level field you may want to come up with. You can also look at this by project. So if, for example, you want to look at this, how my resources are balanced on the project by project basis, you can also have this filter and say, I would like to look at my over allocations. Where's a better example? Like when I drill into the project, I can tell that this particular project has one engagement, right? This particular project has one. Whereas I think I have a couple examples where I have one project. See, you have one project, one resource assigned to this project, and there's like several engagements. If I click on that one, it will tell me just exactly those, list out only those exact engagement, and it will tell you right away that they're over my capacity over time. So there's different ways of getting a lot of information and drill into. And I can also look at this by only narrowing down the window down to 2017. And I can also limit this by engagement or by the resource name. So there's it's a resource I have. So so I can do this by the resource name. Okay. Then yeah, I wonder why do I have only one? Because I already reassigned this to Charles. If you remember, I reassigned this to Charles, and now it's not showing it. So what you see at the middle of the screen is the kind of graphical heat map representation on the timeline, telling you where those higher demand spots on the timeline by resource, right? And at the bottom you see basically the histogram of, and this is by week, information giving you the color, different colors are telling you different projects. So you can say that this red one is Epic 1 project, and I can click on that. It will just highlight this only one project and filter all other widgets on that screen. There's a lot of clicking and dynamics on this. Sometimes it's actually overwhelming, and sometimes it's over too much. But I figured, I'm gonna give it to you, so you take it to whatever level you feel is appropriate. I think my time is up as far as me kind of talking and showing, and I would be happy to take any questions. I hope you heard me the whole time.
Yes, Alex. Yes, Alex. We heard
Okay,
you.
good.
We heard you very well. If you go ahead over to the chat box, you'll be able to see some of the questions. We had some questions coming in the chat box. Do you want to go ahead and go on there?
All right. So, yeah, deck will be distributed. Recording many resources. Oh, hi, Mark. Won't allow you to request specific people. How about using defined roles instead? Assign the role to the project, and then the resource manager subtracts the person to the role. So you can assign a person. You can assign a generic resource. This particular version of the tool that I was showing doesn't go that far. I mean, it's as far as assigning the role, because you would need to define the availability and understand how do you assign this role. Basically, you would need to transfer this role into the generic resource, and then have the generic resource being assigned to an engagement. Yeah, there's a little bit of a confusion that you may encounter when it comes to generic resources versus the real resources, and how do you balance this between the generic resources and the real resources. I guess I would dedicate a whole another topic about what's the best practice to deal with generic resources versus the real resources. I hope that kind of explains, maybe not answers the question, but it explains, this one needs a bit more, and more analytics. So we've seen the cases where the entire resource pool was represented by generic resources, and those generic resources were plugged as teams. So when you have a team of, let's say, 5 people, you say their availability is 500% basically, and then this this tool will work with this number, assuming that this is 500, this is 5 people. So if you put like 6 engagements worth of 100% at the same time, this will be overallocated because it's over 5. So this takes into account this capacity number of every single resource. Okay. Another question. Would engagements be assigned as the project level or per deliverable work stream? What's the best practice? The engagement is assigned as at a project level. Yeah, it's at the project level, not per deliverable. And you can in order to achieve that per deliverable assignment and per deliverable tracking, you can create multiple engagements per project, and call this engagement for the initiation phase or initiation deliverable of the project, and then have it as a separate engagement for the same resource even. Okay, so that's how you can differentiate and make it more detailed, not just one resource per project. We can have multiple engagements. All of this out of the box for the famous project. Well, the part that what I was showing, this part here, this particular app in the engagement leveling, the TIG level, is not out of the box. This is actually free for our managed services clients. This is going to be on the App Store with a limited edition, up to 10 engagements. But if you'd like the full version, you'll have to contact Daniel separately. If I may, Daniel. You'll need to have license of Microsoft Project Online, but yes. The Power BI license is free with Office 365, and then the content pack that for this particular engagements you'll get for free, and then that's yours basically. You will need to download. Then just respond the same. Project Online can show information of historic or planned assignments, resources to projects with the period of time included. From the past, future assignment. So there's no out of the box. There's no historical storage of information in Project Online. So if you changed a date for the project from this date to this date, the date will change. But the fact that you did change this date from that date is not going to be preserved in the system unless you put another mechanism that kind of stores this data someplace else in some kind of other historical data storage. Out of the box, it doesn't do that, but we'll be happy to work with you on setting some of this trending data capabilities in place. How is capability measured? 100% of all hours, 100% of 2080, 100% less than 20 overhead hours, training, vacation, etc. Where is this configured? So the 100%, it's configured based on the resource calendar that is attached to every single resource. So by default, this is a 8-hour working day, 5 days a week, 40-hour week. So if you assign someone a 100% for a certain day, this is likely going to be the 8 hours. Right? If this is coming into the, let's say, February, where they have you have less working days, it will be equated to a lesser hours per given 100%. Right? Let's say if you put 100% in February, it's going to be less hours than you put it in a different day. So this is looking at the calendar basically and calculating that, as well as the overallocations are based on the capacity, on the available capacity. Not available on the capacity of the resource, right? So if the resource is max capacity is 100%, this is also going to be looked at the calendar, and will take into account the hours that are maxed at that time. There's a figure in the resource profile called max units, which you can. Well, thanks, Andrew. Yeah, and this figure is max units. Yeah, don't get confused when you see the max units fluctuates over time. So there's a way to set up the max units not to be like 100% or 80% across the entire timeline. You can actually say in 2017 this person's max units is 100%, but starting from 2018 January 1st, this person max units is going to go down to 80%. And then go up in let's say in July the next year, or maybe this person is going to be on sabbatical for 3 months, so you probably want to reduce his max units down to 0, for a period of months, for period of that vacation. So that's that. Well, I think there's then did I at least attempted. Did I attempt to answer all the questions, or there are some others?
We got a couple thank yous, so I guess you did a good job.
Well, okay. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody's time. Thanks for comment. Thanks for staying, even for the questions. It's always nice to see a lot of people staying until the very end. And again, thanks for being with us today, and looking forward to seeing you again. Thanks. Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.